Today we'll be making a mixed berry jam using an atmospheric steam canner. But before we get started on our jam recipe, I wanted to first talk a little bit about the differences in our traditional boiling water bath canner and the atmospheric steam canner. Now either of these canners, you can see they're roughly about the same size, and either canner can be used for canning our high acid foods. So that would be any food that is a pH of 4.6 or less. So that's any of our fruits, our acidified foods like pickles, our jams and jellies. You could use either of these canners for those types of foods. Some of the big differences is that with your boiling water bath canner, it relies on the heat generated by the boiling water. So you have to put enough water in the boiling water bath canner so that you're filling you've got enough water to cover your jars by about 1 to 2 inches of water. And with the atmospheric steam canner, it's going to rely on the heat generated from the steam in the canner. So you only use about 2 to 4 quarts of water in the pan, in the bottom steam pan of this canner. But whereas like the boiling water bath canner, you can watch to make sure that that you maintain a boil during processing, and you can't do that with the atmospheric steam canner. So it is important that that it either has a thermometer to monitor the temperature, or you can use a thermometer and insert it into the vent ports in the canner to just make sure that it maintains about 212 degrees. That's the boiling point of water at sea level. So with the atmospheric steam canner, you put the jars on top of the boiling water. So along with that, some of the advantages to the atmospheric steam canner, since you're using a lot less water, it's going to use less water. It'll take less time and heat energy in order to bring the water to a boil in this canner versus the boiling water bath canner. But for our recipe, we'll go ahead and get started on that. We're using a mixture of blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries, and we'll need about 4 cups of crushed berries for this recipe. And then we're using 4.5 tablespoons of powdered pectin and 3 cups of sugar. So I'm going to just go ahead. I've already washed the berries and sorted them, remove the stems and leaves, but I'm going to just go ahead and start crushing them with I'm just using a potato masher for this. And we're going to keep mashing them until till they're mostly all mashed up. And if you do have a lot of seeds, you could strain those out. But since we've got quite a few blueberries in here, I think that helps even out. We don't have a lot of seeds. Okay, and now that we've got those pretty well smashed, I'm going to take them to our cooking pot, and again, we need 4 cups of berries. And now we'll add our 4.5 tablespoons of powdered pectin. While we're waiting for our berries to come to a full rolling boil, we're going to go ahead and get our steam pot filled with water so that can start heating up for our canning process. Okay, we'll add our sugar. We're going to add 3 cups of sugar to our berries and pectin mixture. We'll let that boil for 1 full minute. Okay, and now that our jam has finished cooking, we can go ahead and start filling our jars. Now our jars have already been washed, and I'm preheating those in an electric water bath canner. That way, we're not taking up too much space on the stovetop. Now the electric water bath canner, you can use that for canning too. I always, if I'm not using that to can, I do think it's a great option because you can use it for things like this, like keeping your jars nice and hot. But now we'll go ahead and use our funnel and start scooping the jam into the jars. At this point, if you do notice that you have a lot of foam on top of your jam, you can skim that off, but we really didn't end up with a lot of foam on this one. Okay, and we want to fill the jars until we've got about 1/4 of an inch from the top. Okay, and then we can use a little plastic spatula to run it around the inside of the jar just to make sure that we don't have any air pockets in the jar. And then with the other end, then we can use to measure our headspace. So again, we want 1/4 of an inch headspace. And that looks good. And now we'll add our lid to the jar. And again, these lids are nice and clean. The lids are one-time use only, so just make sure that you're using a nice, new, clean lid. And then we'll put our ring band and put the ring band on just until it's fingertip tight. You don't want to over-tighten the lids. Okay, and there's one done, and we'll move on to our next jar. And then we'll put that lid on, and again, just fingertip tight. It's important to not over tighten the bands on the jars. So now we'll go ahead and start adding our jars to our canner. So we put the jars onto our preheated canner, and then we'll put the lid on, and we wait until we've got pure steam coming out the vent holes of the canner. Okay, now that we have steam venting from the canner, we'll go ahead and check the temperature inside the canner. We want to know that the temperature in the canner is at 212 degrees, plus or minus 1 degree Fahrenheit. And then that's when we start our processing time. And we'll process for 10 minutes. Now that our 10 minutes is up, we're going to go ahead and turn the heat off, and then we'll take the lid off of the canner. But now it's important when you remove the lid to angle it towards you so that the steam doesn't come right into your face. And then we'll just let the jars sit there for 5 minutes. Okay, so after 5 minutes, we can go ahead and remove all of the jars from the canner. And you need to set them somewhere where they'll be undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. And it's important to not be tempted during this time to want to touch the jars or the lids or to check the seals. They need to sit and give them time to cool down and for the lids to seal. After 12 to 24 hours, that's when you can go through and check that they've got a good seal on them. One good way is just to make sure that if the lid looks concave, or if you press down on the jar with your fingertip, that shouldn't make any popping sounds. Also, after that time, you'll want to label your jars with the name of the jam and also the date that they were processed. That's really important so that you won't forget how long that jam has been in your pantry. I hope you'll give this recipe a try. It's the mixed berry jam using the atmospheric steam canner.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.